Hello and welcome to another Healthy Bite. My name is Dr. Ron Ehrlich, and before I start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I am recording this, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Now, this week's episode is with Sarah Wilson, and I love talking to Sarah. I've known her for many years when she was, just a journalist on the Sun Herald, where she tracked her journey, or many of her journeys and issues that she was passionate about at the time, but she particularly tracked her journey through quitting sugar and the impact that that had on her health. And that morphed into a book called I Quit Sugar, which morphed into, million copies sold internationally right across the world. And then morphed into an online wellness program where it really changed the lives of so many people. And I often said to Sarah, because I knew her before it had unfolded and that kind of success, I said when she was doing the I Quit Sugar, she had done more to alert people to the problem of consuming sugar than the dental profession has done. And I'm proud of this. They've been talking about this for over 60 years. But there was something about the way Sarah delivered that message which seemed to reach many people and struck a chord and made a difference to their lives. Now, after the success of that book, I Quit Sugar, she went on to write another book called First We Make the Beast Beautiful, where she talks about mental health and how it is viewed, how labels are put onto people, and actually reframing the way we view these issues. And then she went on to write this wonderful book, This One Wild and Precious Life, where she tracks through various walks and cycling trips and backpacking around the world and the impact that that had. And to know Sarah, if you don't know her, reading that book is really, you can hear her voice in every single page. I think she's a tremendous writer and really inspiring, and it was wonderful to talk to her. And the book, and particularly the discussion, which kind of linked how we move around the world, particularly walking and cycling at this slower pace, and the impact that that has on us. It struck a chord with me because over the last 10 years I have made walking holidays a part of my annual life, and for 2 weeks every year we've walked through Europe and through particularly across Spain, having done the Camino. Now the Camino is from St. Jean Pied de Port to Santiago de Compostela and on another 80 or 100 kilometres to the Atlantic coast, and that totals up 880 kilometres. And many people, of course, do that in one go. It's about a 40-day walk, 6 weeks, say, and that is an amazing experience. That's not what I did. I did it in 4 trips, 220 kilometres each year, where we just picked up in the following year where we'd left off and walked on, and it was a wonderful experience, a different experience to that 6-week trip. I know if you've done that 6-week trip, it is truly a pilgrimage, because after a week or two, the walking, getting up every day and walking 15, 20 or 30 kilometres, that was about our limit. 31 kilometres was our limit in any single day. Walking that kind of a trip day after day, week after week, takes on a whole different experience, which I haven't had, but I can imagine would be another level altogether, because you are with a group of people that you are constantly bumping into along the way. And we got a taste of that in the first section, because we did catch up with the same people as we walked that first 2 weeks. But then when we came back the second year, those people weren't there. And we were walking with friends, so that was great too, but it would have been quite a different experience. But even getting up in the morning and walking 20 or 30 kilometres is an extraordinary experience. It is just a way of slowing down to a human level. We drive from one place to another and things zip past us. We fly, or we get on a train and they go even faster, and we get on a plane and they go even faster. And the scale of it for a human being, still with our Stone Age hardware, our bodies and brains, it's a different experience to walk it, to see a village or a town in the distance, and to approach it, and to hear it, and to smell it, and to feel it, and then to walk through it, and then to leave it behind you, is quite a different experience. And I know in that first year where we took 10 days of walking, we had a break of a day or so in between, and we covered 220 kilometres over 10 days, and then got in a car and drove 220 kilometres in 2 hours. And that really hit home for us, particularly when we went up hills and you just had to put your foot on the accelerator, and the difference that was extraordinary. And so the whole human experience of walking on that level has really had a profound positive impact on my life and my health. And I've walked across Spain now. I've done the French Camino. I've done the Via Francigena, which is through Italy. And we were going to go on and walk through England, doing the Cotswolds walk in 2020, but unfortunately we weren't able to do that. So instead we walked from Palm Beach in Sydney at the tip of the northern beaches of Sydney to La Perouse, which is just at the opening of Botany Bay, and that constituted a walk of about 120 kilometres, which we did over 5 days. And that was an extraordinary experience too, because I had driven through so many of those suburbs for the last 40, 50 or so years, and to walk through them is quite a different experience. So this is one of the reasons why I think walking is just such a good exercise, because it is slow, it is sustainable, it is safe, it's out in the fresh air, it can be sociable, you can do it for the rest of your life. And that is why I think walking is one of the best exercises. And it's interesting, in my book, I quoted a study that came out of the UK, which looked at walking speed as one of the best predictors of whether you would be suffering from any cardiovascular event in the next 5 years. So walking speed was seen as a better predictor than anything of whether you were going to suffer from a cardiovascular event in the next 5 years. So how's that for a statistic? And also, if you haven't heard, one of our podcast guests was with podiatrist Mark Ninio, and so often people have problems walking. You know, they've either got foot pain, ankle pain in the knee, hip, lower back, and so they can't walk. And often people then go to see their chiro, osteo, or physio, which I think is an entirely appropriate place to go if you're having any of those musculoskeletal problems. But it surprises me in my practice how often I see people or hear people going, yeah, I go back for an adjustment every week or every 2 weeks or once a month or even once every 2 or 3 months. And I kind of think to myself, why does that require constant readjustment? And posturally, there are many reasons why that might be, but one that is commonly overlooked is foot structure. So if you're having those kind of pains, I would think about having somebody who knows what they're doing do an assessment of your foot structure, the way your heel touches the ground, the way your foot puts weight down, and then the way the front of your foot causes you to lift off. And that is all about foot mechanics. And if your foot rolls in or rolls out and you've had a chronic musculoskeletal pain problem, as in lower back, then that kind of imbalance can just perpetuate the problem, for years. Muscles have memory. And the thing about doing a proper assessment so that you can comfortably walk, and that's incredibly positive, is to consider that. So I digress there for a moment, but back to walking, and I would encourage you to do those kind of trips. And look, I still remember the first day that we left St. John, and it was a rainy day, and we were walking the Camino, and we'd been inspired by a wonderful movie by Martin Sheen called The Way. The Way. And I'd recommend it to you, and this is not a spoiler because this is what happens in the first 5 minutes of the movie. He traces the Camino because his son set off on the Camino, which is, as I said, a 6-week walk, and the son dies on the first day walking over the Pyrenees. And I kind of thought, wow, I mean, a 6-week walk, dying on the first day is extraordinary. Well, it turns out that the first day of that walk is actually one of the most challenging. And it's challenging because it's very steep. It was particularly challenging on the day that we did it because it was pouring with rain. I realised there is a big difference between Gore-Tex that gives you shower-proof and Gore-Tex that gives you a whole day's worth of rain-proof, waterproofing. I had terrible equipment. I had a really old pair of walking boots, and it was raining and it was foggy, and I could entirely see how easily it would be to slip and have an accident on that first day. And I remember on the end of that first day being so sore that I could barely walk from my bed to the bathroom, and yet that day I was going to be doing a 25-kilometre walk. Turned out I could do it. And I did do it. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience on so many different levels. One of achievement, one of being in touch with the elements as well. That's another thing. If it's raining, you normally run for cover. But if you've got good gear, there is something incredibly exhilarating about walking, even in the pouring rain, provided you've got good gear. And we've even done walks in France where we've walked through very light snow, and that was delightful as well. And of course, heat, I think, is the worst or most challenging to walk through. So walking is a wonderful experience. And my conversation with Sarah was a reminder of the power of it on so many levels. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to this week's podcast with Sarah, I mean, we didn't just talk about walking, we talked about other stuff as well. If you haven't had a chance to read her wonderful book, This One Wild and Precious Life, I'd recommend it to you. And if you are interested in doing some walking, I'd encourage you to do it because it's a wonderful, wonderful form of exercise. I hope this finds you well. Until next time, this is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Be well.
This podcast provides general information and discussion about medicine, health and related subjects. The content is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice or as a substitute for care by a qualified medical practitioner. If you or any other person has a medical concern, he or she should consult with an appropriately qualified medical practitioner. Guests who speak in this podcast express their own opinions, experiences and conclusions.